So if I recall correctly, I believe that Mythic Plus does not have additional mechanics than regular Mythic. So I figured it would be helpful to people if I went through some of my clips dungeon by dungeon. I will start off with Siege of Boralus and talk about the trash mobs and what abilities you want to look out for, what things will be useful as a Shadow Priest, whether it's Mass Dispel or Offensive Dispelling or dispelling diseases, and etc. And I'll talk about everything that should help you understand the dungeon better and get to know the bosses and trash mobs. So in the beginning, you will come across Untitled Raider. He is someone that mainly melee will have to watch out for. They will cast an ability called Savage Tempest, which will do a large amount of damage in a small circle around the mob. The Scrimshaw Enforcer has a knockback, so as a tank, you will want to position yourself with your back against the wall. That way you don't get knocked down into other mobs. To Savage Tempest by Untitled Raider, I would highly recommend that if nobody else in your party has a way to stop that channel, that you would fear the mob just to make sure that your DPS aren't losing a lot of time on that mob from having to move away, specifically for melee. Black Tar Bombers, they will cast an ability called Burning Tar, which will drop circles of orangey red on the ground, which as usual will just damage you over time as you continue to stand in them. Tide Shredders will cast an ability called Iron Ambush that will deal damage in a circle around them. For the Doghound Packmaster, he has a buff where his damage is increased by 125% if he is next to a Doghound. So you want to kill the dog as soon as possible at the beginning of the pull. He is basically going to target somebody and chase them for like 9 to 10 seconds. And the idea as the person being chased is there will be bombs that are dropped around the area and you want to walk him over them, and it will essentially break his ankles and stop him from chasing you briefly. And then he takes a couple seconds to cast other stuff before he re-engages on another target. And then aside from that, there are just ads that spawn around the place. For some reason, when I've done this dungeon, he just tends to focus on me a lot, and he would pick me like 3 times in succession, and I found that really strange. So I'm not sure if he specifically chooses range more often, but he hates me. Main Commander, he is the mob on the horse. He will cast an ability called Bolstering Shout that you definitely want to interrupt their stun, because it will buff other mobs around him, and if it does manage to go off though, we can always just Mass Dispel it. He also casts something called like Trampling Charge or something, and you of course don't want to stand in front of him, otherwise he will run at you, deal damage, and stun you, but since I am an amazing human, I can just trinket out of that. Weird hallway area, you want to run forward towards the mobs when they are reloading. While they're shooting, you want to make sure you take cover behind some of the columns on the side or like hide along the walls. But then when they reload, then you can move forward and try to engage them. I haven't mentioned yet is that for the Wave Tenders, you absolutely want to interrupt Watertight Shell because it will apply a buff similar to the Commander does that reduces damage by 90% for all trash around him. It is also a magic buff though, so we can also Mass Dispel that as well. If you find yourself in the water, you will be eaten by a shark after a few seconds, so if you can avoid it, never go into the water. Deckhands cast an ability called Crimson Swipe that will deal damage in a cone in front of them, so as casters we don't have to worry too much about it, but in the case that the tank is taking them close by to you, just try to distance yourself or make sure you move out of front of them when they cast that. Essentially killing ads and then DPSing the boss, and then it rinses and repeats like that. During the ad phase, I believe the Cannoneer is the one that when you kill him, he will drop one on the ground. Someone needs to pick it up, aim it towards the boat, and shoot it, and then the boss will come back out to re-engage you. Demolisher casts an ability that fears you and is not interruptible, and the Bilge Rat Buccaneers will also drop bananas on the ground that will stun you if you step on them, so kind of watch your feet because even after they're dead, I believe the bananas remain on the ground. Demolishers also cast an ability called Crushing Slam that deals damage in a line in front of him and also knocks you up in the air. The Bilge Rat Cutthroat casts an ability called Rotting Wounds, which is a disease, so if your healer is unable to dispel it off the target, then I think it would be worth it for a global to dispel something like that. Seems generally pretty easy. You just want to avoid stuff on the ground as usual, and then when he casts an ability called Crashing Tide, you want to stand next to the statue and position yourself on the opposite side from where the wave is coming from, and then the statue will pretty much create a gap that keeps you safe. And then Crashing Tide is a line in front of him that you want to move away from. It takes a couple seconds for him to cast that, so you should have plenty of time to move out of the way. Boss is a little annoying, but from what I understand, you basically just want to keep killing tentacles. It reminds me of Herja, where one of the tentacles will be holding an engineer, and if you release him, he will repair the cannon, and then somebody can get in it and shoot at the octopus boss that is there hovering and watching you the whole time. I think it's similar in the sense that the tank wants to make sure he is tanking the Demolishing Terror, because I think if it has nothing to hit nearby, it will start casting slams that deal a lot of damage. Similar to what I mentioned earlier about the water, you want to make sure you don't go in there or a shark is going to eat the shit out of you. The annoying thing though is that the platforms to go between all the different broken cannons are kind of annoying. The pathing kind of sucks. You have to jump properly, and I feel like at times you might just slip in the water and it might be hard to get out. But there are 3 different areas, and you need to keep track of where the next tentacles are spawning and then head over there and keep using the cannon. You could probably dot up the boss if you wanted to, because damage done to him isn't, something ridiculous where he has damage reduction or anything, but using the cannons does seem to be the most effective way. So I think at the very least, it would be fine to leave your dots up. We only have 2 to manage anyways. Seems like that is at most what is important for us as our class and spec, but hopefully people didn't mind that it seemed kind of like an abrupt way for me to present this information. I pretty much want my videos to be just information and just churning it out there, because I feel like rambling on too much is pointless. People watch stuff usually for information, so I wanted to just keep shooting that information out. So hopefully this video was helpful and you guys enjoyed it.